SoulCycle YouTube page. So you guys can refer back to the information there. And our guests, some of you guys tapped into the conversation over the past these recent weeks, and then those people that you may have wanted to connect with or even listen into. If you want to know any more information or any of those good things, just contact myself or Gina or Kelly if you guys want to connect a little bit more. I've had people actually connect with some of our guests, just, on other levels of this thing, because we're talking about race and wellness, but it's an issue that carries over across spectrums, across workplaces, across industries, and things like that. So a lot of what we've been talking about can be addressed pretty much anywhere and everywhere with our different walks of life. So I definitely want you guys to feel free to contact any of us when it comes to specific questions or specific things that you may want to address moving forward, because that's the big thing about this is, people like you, even if it's 5 of you, if it's of us, we want you guys to take these conversations that we're having and the things that we're learning through the training and the different perspectives, and take it to the places and spaces that that you're involved with, that you work at, and things like that. So other than that, you guys know what we've been up to. You guys know what's been going on. I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, hydrating, drinking water, eating all the fruits and vegetables, and, getting sleep when you can, and doing a little bit of meditating, therapy, all those different things kind of help as you move forward and just continue on in general. Amazing. All right. I like it. So we, this third part of our series, where we're diving into getting real specific pretty much. Each week we started with focusing on Black men in the community, which guys can check out the part 1 and part 2 on the YouTube page, aSweatLife page that I mentioned not too long ago. And our second week last week, we addressed the race and wellness issue, focusing on Black females in the industry. And this week we are chiming into our lovely LGBTQ plus community, which we're going to talk a little bit more about, like terms and things like that, for this part 3 too. So we starting out with our man Kellen, just to kind of clue you guys all in and make sure we're all on the same page. We got Kellen. He's awesome. A lot of you guys probably taken his class before. He is a SoulCycle instructor and amongst other things. And we are going to have Tosh. Hopefully she can hop into our call. She's actually out West Coast, and you guys know those time differences can be a little funky, a little difficult. So we're hoping that she can jump into our call before we end things for the evening. But yeah, let's just jump right into our conversation today. So Kellen, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Taking it one day at a time. So look, for those who know you, like a lot of people know all about you. Like, oh my gosh, Mr. SoulCycle Kellen. They love your energy. I love your energy, from in person, in real life, to your Instagram page. Tell us specifically, especially for those who don't know who you are, who you are, what do you do, and what life looks like you what does life look like for you as far as the brands you're involved with, things that you're doing that's connected to what you do for work.
Okay. So my name is Kellen. To those of you who don't know, I have been in Chicago for about 6 years now, and I've been with SoulCycle for about 5 years. I've always worked in the fitness community. I've always worked in the fitness industry. I was one of those lucky millennials. I'm on the not the tail end, but the beginning end of the millennials. And I graduated from college right when the economy crashed, and was like, oh shit, what am I going to do? All these jobs that I thought I was going to get aren't hiring now. So I was working at a gym, and I was like, well, I'm working at a gym. I guess I'm going to have to make this work. And I guess we can say that I did make it work. I started off in small local fitness, just like working front desk, and then worked my way up into a membership director role, and then worked my way into Lululemon at a time when the company was still very, very small, and there was probably only one store in Chicago at that time. And then outside of that, we just had showrooms scattered around some of the smaller cities in the Midwest. So Lululemon took me to Kansas City, and then ultimately to Chicago, where I found SoulCycle. So I've been in the fitness community for the last, I guess that was 2008. So 12 years now. And I think the one thing that I realized working in fitness is that you are responsible for creating the space that you want to put out into the world, and the space that you want to feel comfortable in. And I think that SoulCycle, after about a year of working at SoulCycle, I really started to feel empowered to really define that space for people, and to be very clear and intentional about the space that I was creating within the fitness industry, and decided that my goal within fitness, with the access to a space like SoulCycle, which has a ton of, that is, lit with privilege, I decided that I wanted to create space for people that look like me to come in and feel comfortable and hear music that they could identify with, and look at someone on the podium that they can identify with. And that has been my driving force pretty much since for the last 4 to 5 years in the fitness industry. But outside of that, I became, and I put this in my bio, but I really became interested in the conversation surrounding dismantling oppression in this country in high school, when I was introduced to it through a leadership program called Anytown, where we discuss all the isms in a safe environment. And it gives us the space to scream and argue and fight, but then to come to resolutions and create actions that we can take back into our communities in order to create spaces that are inclusive. So that kind of lit a fire within me at the age of 16, and definitely has been a conversation in my life ever since. So these conversations around race are not new to me, obviously, because I'm Black and I am a queer man. So I am just, I'm excited that people are willing to have those conversations now. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. Now, you talked about and said that you are a queer Black man, and a lot of that is misunderstood by a lot of people, like labeling, oh, okay, are you LGBTQ plus, or are you LGBTQIA? It's all these different terms. And of course we can Google, and of course people can find information, talk to people. But since we have you in this space, can you talk to us and share with us, educate us the terms and the specifics, and how should we use them?
Well, one thing I would suggest is just asking people what they choose to be identified as. I choose to be identified as a queer man. Gay, for me, I mean, I'm gay, but like, for me, that limits, I feel like it puts me in a box in a way, and I choose to express, I'm a cisgender man, don't get me wrong, but I choose to express my gender in ways that are outside of the quote unquote box. Um, and so that's why I choose the term queer. But I just would always suggest people ask. I know a lot of times people lead with pronouns. So my pronouns are he, him, but I don't mind a she, her as well. But that's usually like within my friend group. We interchange our pronouns, but I just always suggest like asking someone like, oh, like, how do you identify, if you feel comfortable? And then also, yeah, like, Google's free. It's 24 hours. It's always available, as you said. So, if you have any questions, definitely use that as a tool as well. But that's how I label myself. It's interesting because I never really identified with it until I heard my grandfather use it in a way that wasn't like derogatory. My grandfather's 95 and he used it in like the old sense of like, I guess like odd or like unique. It was the way that he used it once in a sentence, and I was like, oh, I like that. And so I like started to incorporate it and was like, I'm gonna like own that for myself and use that. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective from a 95-year-old.
Oh yeah, you gotta love our gramps and all of them and the they use. But I like that. I like those
Yeah.
words that he used. So in particular, I mean, it's discussions out there, and people say that if you're Black, you're queer, you have layers of things that pretty much kind of count against you. And I want to know, it seems like in your walk within the fitness industry, a lot of it was a lot of inviting spaces, but at the same time, you went head in on specifically what you wanted to address and tackle in the mission that you had. And I want to just you share with us if you feel as though labeling yourself in these specifics, did you have any issues connected to that? Was there problems, or can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I would not say that labeling myself like around my sexuality has limited me, and I think if anything, it's allowed me to have a larger platform. But I will say that in the fitness industry, I have found that race has been a roadblock in some ways surrounding the way that how do I say this? Just like I think that people have unconscious biases and will look at a schedule or a website and see something and be like, nope, I'm not gonna identify with that, and like that's not my thing. So I definitely think that I've had to, and I mean, as a Black person, and Marquita, you can identify with this, like we have to work a bit harder sometimes to get the same recognition that our counterparts, our white counterparts, get for doing the bare minimum. And I've seen that within my career where I've had to wait for certain things for certain acknowledgments or certain promotions. And then when I am promoted, are told, you know, um, I'm being told something like, what's the word I'm looking for? They're saying, oh, like, it's been like, I can't believe it's taken this long, or like, it's been too long. Like, this should have happened a while ago. And it's like, well, if it should have happened a while ago, why didn't it just happen a while ago? Why did I need to like wait in line or like have to really prove myself or my loyalty in order to just receive, acknowledgement for the job that I'm doing? I will say that in my experience with working as a store manager with Lululemon, it was a bit of the opposite in my career, especially in the beginning, because I was the only Black store manager or male store manager at that company for a while. I stood out in a different way because then everyone knew who I was, everyone knew the work that I was doing, and so I was able to make a name for myself at the company and was able to stand out in that way. But yeah, I feel like it's a constant it's like a constant maze of trying to figure out, like, is this going to work in my advantage, or is it going to be something that's going to prove to be a hurdle for me? But I don't know. I just lead with like who I am. If you don't like it, great. Somebody else will. That's not my problem. Like I can't be worried about what others receive of me, and I just continue to move forward.
Definitely. Yeah, like you said, over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about all those challenges, in particular to race. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to see if there were any connections or anything that tacking on a couple of other labels, was there anything else going on there? So to me, it just looks like the race thing in particular is that one thing that's like, what's not connecting? What's going on? So in your opinion, like, you know, you've worked as a manager, you worked in fitness as an instructor, worked with organizations. What would you say, even just in your experience, what has not been connecting?
What do you mean? I'm sorry. What do you mean?
Well, what's
What's
not
that?
been connecting as far as uh, what's not been connecting as far as our experience in these industries? Why isn't our experience, the Black experience, connecting well within these industries or
Oh,
within this industry?
okay. I see what you're saying. I don't think that this. Well, I think just like most things in this country, you know, when things are created, they are not created with the depend just and I'm speaking in general here, but things are created with the intention that like what is like normal or what is like the base demographic is usually like a white demographic, and a lot of times others aren't really thought of until later in the later in the like construction or like execution of something. So I think that a lot of times just like the space isn't created for us, and then we have to like infiltrate the organization or the studio, and then either like show up and feel like we're not welcomed, or and then go do our own thing separately, or show up and feel we're not welcome and then like do the work to create the space and bring others into it. And I think that I don't know, I think that all of these conversations, especially like this one, is important because you know there are leaders in the fitness industry that are attached to this and that are listening right now that you know have the power and the capability to create that change now that we are all being honest and open and understanding and listening, going back and hiring accordingly, and making sure that all voices are represented, and that you know, I want, I mean, one thing that I want is that like the spaces that I'm a part of look like the community that I live in, and Chicago's a very diverse community, and so I get confused when I walk into places and it's not a diverse like scene. I'm like, what? So whole swaths of this community are being left out and aren't being approached for whatever reason. And so I think that um with along with like hiring and you know, there needs to be voices at the top and there needs to be voices um at all levels so that these things are addressed.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So in your opinion, what would you say brands or companies, like, is there any brands or companies doing it right, or any people that you're like, hey, like, you know, they've been going down a pretty good road when it comes to inclusion? Um, and then what, in your opinion, do you think could be even like a 5-step, like moving forward, like the ways that people in these brands, companies, whoever, can be a little bit better, at least a start?
I don't know if I want to like name brands necessarily. I'm trying to well, I don't I'm trying to think even that like what immediately pops into my head. I mean, I can speak from my own personal experience with SoulCycle. Um, we created like a diversity and inclusion council like about a year and a half, 2 years ago, that I've been a big part of. And a lot of the things that happened there were operational, but much needed. And then from there, we broke off and created about a year ago, created a POC employee resource group. So that was just a space for us to come together, people of color at the company, allies, people from different departments, people from our C-suite and executive team, to come and listen to what's going on in the field, what are the concerns of our instructors, where are we needing to make changes. And then a lot of those changes in the last year have been executed, and I've been really pleased with the execution of those plans. I think that hiring is a big one. I think that equal hiring is a big one. I know that, I hate walking into a fitness studio and seeing a bunch of white faces behind a front desk and then brown faces cleaning up. That is like my number one like pet peeve when it comes to race. I'm like, they're a red flag. Now I don't even know if I really want to come work out here, because I'm seeing that people that look like me are valued different from white people. And that was a concern of mine when I started with SoulCycle, and that's something that I brought up until it was changed at SoulCycle, because I was like, I just don't understand how, we can say that we stand for diversity and inclusion, yet we're not being honest with our hiring practices. So I don't know if I don't know if there's like one brand to me that's like really out there killing it at all on a large scale. I know that a lot of smaller like independent studios, I think, have a little bit more leeway to do those things. But I don't know. I can only speak from my personal experience.
Well, no, but that's great.
Yeah.
That's great that you share that. I did not know that about SoulCycle, having these spaces. Having a group, at least just having that space for people to have a conversation,
Yeah.
is something that I didn't know. And the places that I've worked, even from front desk to been a trainer at, had nothing close to that. So I think that's something really great that you shared, because, right, like, you're going to talk from your experience. So that's more of what we definitely want to hear, because that's something that I think people could think about, even for their own companies, businesses. What do you want to do? What do you create to invite these spaces in these different communities and places, spaces, and how do you go about it? Well, maybe somebody like yourself, creating a group, a committee, and things like that, to figure out what can be done,
Yeah.
to make things better. So, so right now, like, I know you've been, we're doing all these talks where we're getting together, and, different organizations, different leaders within the community are organizing and putting a lot of different things together to figure out what we can do to move forward. And for you, it seems like you've already been in that space of being like a change agent, or somebody that's thinking of how we can be better. Right now, for you, the space that you're in, how are you looking at things now? Like, what's on your heart as far as, like, for you to move forward? Are you just tapping it more into like the organizations you're involved in, and you guys are just figuring things out and moving forward? Do you feel like you're in like a healthy space with the communities that you're involved in right now to move forward? What does all that look like for you?
I haven't been working for the last 3 months now, so I'm extremely eager to get back to work. But I so I want to continue the path that I was on before. I think once I kind of had my like moment of like, clarity around like you need to just like bring yourself and like what you want to create in this space to work every day, and then like it will come to you. And like the moment I like decided to do that, everything kind of shifted in my career. And I think that I was recognized for that. But I don't know, the one like my biggest point that I want to drive home for people, especially people of color or women or anybody that's a part of a marginalized community, that like if you have access to a space that isn't giving, that if you have access to a space that isn't doing what you feel it should be doing to be inclusive, use that space and create the inclusivity that you want to create. Because like obviously if you're in that space and you have access to that space, like they want you to be there. And so if you're living your truth and bringing in the people that you want to bring in, a lot of times it won't be met with resistance. If it is, that's a completely different conversation. But I found in my experience that it wasn't met with resistance. I saw that there were opportunities at, at my place of work, and was like, well, I want to fix some of these opportunities. For one, I was like, we don't put the same effort into Black History Month as we do into Pride Month. So I just started by doing my own Black History Month ride, because I was like, this is what I want to do. This is going to make me feel good, make me feel like I'm doing something for my community and the people that work out here that look like me. And I know that they'll be receptive to it. And I know that people who aren't necessarily Black, who want to still be a part of that and support, will show up. And it ended up being wildly successful. And then the next year, the company began to recognize it, as a holiday, and then the next year we built a relationship with the King Center, and made a substantial donation to them. So, I think it starts with you and what you want to create. And then, if your organization is willing and open to, creating that space and creating that change, I think that they'll jump on board with you as well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. All right. We got some folks that's shouting you out and showing some love. uh, yes. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And like I said, at the top of this conversation is, having these conversations, getting specific, and then just stepping up and just saying, hey, like, I see that this is an issue. I see that there's space for us to create change, and then just move forward. I think a lot of things right now is a lot of conversations have been had, like kind of like on the sidelines, and people probably think to move forward or create like these groups or committees, things like that. And I think now we're definitely in that space that we're all like, hey, like, all right, I feel like I have that to do those things now. And so, yeah, I agree with you a lot, and a lot of things that you said. Is there anything that you want to leave with us? You kind of said, you did say a lot in that last portion here, but is there anything else that that you will want to just leave with the folks today?
I don't know. I think my biggest point is around just like, creating the spaces. Oh, I see I'm sorry, I don't mean to derail. I'm like, I see there's a question in the chats, but I think I want to drive home that point around like, creating the space that you want to see, with whatever space access to space that you have, using that to your benefit. I think is my biggest, the biggest point that I want to drive home. And I even have some like writers that are watching, and people like Janine and like Branielle, who, like those, like Branielle literally started writing my class because we listen to the same podcast and like we have the same interest. And she was like, Beyonce said go to SoulCycle and Homecoming, so I'm going to SoulCycle. And then like looked and was like, oh, this is the person that like gets, she did her research on social media. This is the person that gets me, so I'm gonna go like go be a part of like what he's doing. And so I don't know, I think that like if you do have that privilege and that access to that space to use it wisely. And then I see that someone
Okay,
asked,
so I had,
not to take over real quick, but I
yeah.
see CC asked,
No. Did you see the question? Cause
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so and
It's okay.
Christina arrived me also.
Do it later. Sorry, I just had to unload. Oh,
What? Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So no, Christina, she
Oh,
like,
okay. I was like, okay, sorry.
but no, Kellen, go right ahead and read off her question, because it was hers, and then it was a question that I haven't gotten to actually yet. That somebody else was like, hey, like, ask this question. So we're gonna let you go ahead, and then I'll that last one too.
Okay. So she's just asking, she says, so besides writing a corporate and addressing what we see as clients, how would you recommend we respond to spaces that aren't inclusive? I know for me, I just don't go. Like, if I don't feel included, if I don't feel welcome, if I'm in a class and I hear like the N-word and music is unedited, I'm like, no, I will get up and leave. And I'm like, I'm not going to support anymore. I may let people know like, hey, this is why I'm leaving. Like, you may want to, address that. But I think that, I just choose not to support places that I don't feel like are here for me,
Yeah. And even just for me on my side of things, you know, on what space and place it is, because for me it's been like, hey, like, I've been in the fitness world, and I actually talked last week about an experience that I had at a studio that I worked at, and they weren't supporting a lot of things that I wanted to bring to the table, and it was just pretty much like part of my brand, a part of who I was as an instructor. And I had the conversations that I needed in like the upper management level. And there were some things that they definitely needed to change. And I decided myself that it was my decision just to move on. Because it wasn't, for me, a lot of it wasn't a space that was my bread and butter. And so for me, I felt like, hey, I'm going to, address how I feel, the things that I think you guys should do better. And a lot of it might have been just like the one-on-one relationship that the two of us had. And her own, ideals about life and wherever she was coming from, her background. So it didn't necessarily reflect the views of, say, like the company as a whole. But she worked in close encounters with me to the point that it just wasn't going to work out. And so I decided to move on. But like Kellen is saying, is, it's one of those things that if you're in like these corporate spaces, I mean, my profession is always a lot of everybody coming together and having so many different opinions, ideas, thoughts, conversations. And I mean, I've had conversations 4 years ago that was a slow transition into making things happen. And now I can say that I'm happy to see a lot of different things happen and change within the culture, within addressing specific things. But yeah, for me, it's, I think that educating yourself in spaces like this, and going out and getting resources and connecting more with different people, and just how you will address anything else as far as like creating a document and saying, hey, I think this is important. Or, we got all these petitions and things like that floating around. You might have to create something like that within your workplace, because it's probably a lot of team players and a lot of co-workers that might feel the way that you feel. So you can be the lead, but maybe you bring them all into the conversation, and then you give them like examples of things that you guys want to see change and things to happen. And a lot of times we have to be very clear about what exactly you want to happen. So maybe it is something like Helen said, creating a committee or group, or bringing in some different ways to bring in this space of being inclusive. And that might look like so many different things for a company. But yeah, I think digging into the communities that are doing the work, organizations and places that are doing the work, and seeing how you can pull what they're doing into the space of the workplace or organization, things like that you're at, and kind of just model those different things that are going on that you see that's working for other places and spaces. But then that other question, Kellen, for you was one of the questions that I had, like, hey, like, let's go ahead and do it. And Gina felt the same way. One of the biggest things is image and our personalities and our identity, our body, our hair, you know, being in all of our Blackness. For you, was there any point in time that you had to change who you are to fit the job or to fit this opportunity, or not?
I think definitely in the beginning as my career of an instructor, I don't know, I don't think I changed who I was. I think I cast a really wide net. And I'm just speaking in regards to music, even just like I cast a really wide net because I was like, I want everyone to feel like they can hear something, you know, like I want everyone to feel included, which I do, but it wasn't necessarily true to like what I wanted to do. And then, so I think that once I decided to like really be authentic in who I am and be like, okay, well, can you hear me? There we go. My Throwback Thursday may sound a lot different from someone else's Throwback Thursday, but I'm going to still play my Throwback Thursday because I know that that may really, well, it may like open up someone's like ears to some new music that they haven't heard before, which often happens. And I get like, oh, what was that song you played? But then also it may really make that like Black woman in the back corner like feel like she's being seen in this room with people that don't necessarily look like her because, you know, her favorite jam from the 90s is being played by the instructor on a podium. So just making sure that I think once I decided to be like really authentic, and especially like within my playlist and like the moves and the music that I was playing in my class, I think that everything kind of fell into place. I like appearance wise, I'm not going to change my appearance for like to please other people. So, you know, I'm gonna keep growing this hair until I'm done, and then I'm gonna cut it off when I feel like it. And you know, I don't really care how other people feel about it. uh, but yeah, I think once I was like the most authentic, and once I am the most authentic in like what I'm doing, I feel like it just like exudes and comes out of me in a way that like people want to be around and want more of it, or and even like that can't identify with it, or like I want to learn, like tell me more, like what do I, you know, like, and not in a like appropriation way, but in like a way that is like authentic, like genuinely curious and wanting to learn. So yeah. Oh, and then
So
just
one last
point, hold on. Sorry, just to add to your point around like companies like doing the work and stuff. I think that I know Janine kind of brought it up in the comments, but just making sure that like we now, okay, so like everybody's talking about it, everybody's talking about race, everybody's talking about like creating more inclusive, diverse, like equitable spaces. So now it's like we have to hold everyone accountable. So it's like, okay, well, you said like back in June that like this is how we were gonna be like moving forward, and yet like here we are a year later and like these things haven't happened. I think that now we as like people, as consumers, as like instructors, have like the ability to now hold the companies that we work for, the companies that we support accountable. So I like want to make sure people know that as well, like hold them accountable.
I think everybody can hear me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I love the comments and things that the people are saying. Just to kind of like read off some people are saying, promote things in ways like fair, prime class times for everybody, bring friends of color to those spaces, ask if they offer any opportunities for discounted membership pricing. We even had somebody say that a lot of these fitness companies will be adding diversity in the next few weeks, months, even years, but how much these employees will be supported and promoted. And one of the last questions here is, what do you want to see from brands as far as transparency goes when it comes to equity?
Well, I mean, I want to see transparency for one. So, I think and I think that you know, actions are very large, and I think that if companies have the money also just to in some ways open your purses, but make sure that like your employees are being supported. I think that's a good point that Janine brought up. It's like it starts at home, it starts at the top, it starts at home. So making sure that like before we're like, yes, donations are great, but it's like, are you even thinking about the people that work for your company that need the support as well? Like what are we doing for them? How are we taking care of our own house? Do we have our own house in order before we can say, well, we support this cause or whatever? So I think that making sure that you're able to not only walk the walk but talk the talk as well, and then making sure that your own companies and brands look like you say you want them to look, and make sure that um, the people of color at your company are being supported appropriately as well.
Yeah. And to bring that all together, I actually have a friend who, we had all this energy of people posting like the black boxes, like 2, maybe 3 weeks or so ago now. And a lot of people saying like Black Lives Matter, and people were talking about, hey, like this is a PR stunt, because let me look at, who are the leaders in your companies, who's the upper management, how do they look, how does management look, things like that. And one particular company I interviewed, they took the approach of, they know what's going on. They know kind of like the politics of it all. And some brands or companies decided not to even say anything because of that. Like they didn't want to get too political and things like that in that nature. But one thing that I really respected about a company in particular, as somebody in my family is involved or is a employee at, is what they did was they actually contacted the Black employees and the upper management CEOs, things like that. They contacted them. They had one-on-one conversations with them all first, and just wanted to get down to like, what do you see? What can we do better as a company? Just pretty much like be open with me as much as possible. And then they moved forward and put their thoughts together, figured out how they wanted to address it, and actually had a town hall discussion, gathered everybody together in the company and had a conversation with their employees first, and how they want to move forward and what they believe and where they stand. And then they went and addressed it to the world, like how they were looking at the Black Lives Matter movement, or just how they operate as a company. And I think, like everybody is saying, like the support of your employees, having your home back first, making sure that you take care of home first is the most important thing out of this. Because at the end of the day, like you said, you can throw things up all day, but what's really happening? And I don't think it's just a switch of a light on or off. For this is really getting down to how a lot of like your mission statements, your values, your ethics, a lot of things that you guys have written and have believed, you have to now take a look at all of those things and pretty much rewrite, redo. It's a lot of things that have to we have to kind of move forward and figure out to be in this better practice. It's all about practice. So like even in wellness, you know, people are like, hey, like I'm trying to get a 6-pack and, you know, 3 months, but it doesn't necessarily happen like that. It's all the work that you do, how you're eating, what you do day in and day out. And so that's kind of like the rhythm that I feel like we all want to see. Like, Kellen, you've been doing your thing. You know, you have a rhythm, you have a flow, and if you're about it and people are about it, hey, let's do this together. Me, myself, I'm the same way. Like, you know, we created my part of it. I'm a Black woman, and this matter if I love what we're doing right. It's when it comes to places and things like that. And I think it's just
Oh no.
oh, did we get away?
Oh, there you are.
Back.
You popped out for a second.
Oh, okay. That was me. Oh, wow. Okay. All righty. Well, we're back. We're good. But yeah, so that's that. If you guys got any more questions or want to talk about anything more in particular, with myself, Kellen, any of the other guests, Gina, any of us, definitely reach out to us. But we're going to move on to the training portion of this series. It's part 3 today, and I'm going to pass it over to Gina.
It's me. I want to read what Janine just wrote in the chat because I think it's important, it's helpful, it's useful. And what she said, I know we all can read it, but I'll read it aloud. I think we realize how much COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting Black and brown people, and pre-existing conditions are a factor. It is really key to note how important fitness is for overall health and wellness, and to note the lack of representation really matters. I am excited to have so many people on the Zoom that can change the space simply by being welcoming and demanding equality. So yay to Kellen, because your spirit helps. I'll snaps for you. And that was great. Janine, I think that summarized everyone's thoughts. So I'm going to attempt to give a quick training with all of the enthusiasm I've been using for previous weeks. For reference, I got my appendix out on Thursday. So I'm a little low energy, but I'm gonna do it. So what we've been talking about and what we continue talking about is having conversations with people who might not agree with us, which is incredibly important for changing hearts and minds, especially right now. Like Kellen talked about probably 8 separate instances while he was talking when he essentially like had to persuade someone to give him space. And a lot of us on this call are not people of color, are white, so we get to use our privilege to do that work too, instead of having to make people stand up for themselves. So we all are responsible for the future, and we all are responsible for equality. So I will talk through this week's talk. I think I get to share my screen. I can do it, which is called, I can do it. It's a theory of change, essentially. So what it does is it gives a motivational interviewing technique. It basically just teaches you, what we're going to talk about is how to ask questions in a way that gets you, I can do this, I can make it a slideshow, that teaches you how to ask questions in a way that allows people to sort of like find their own biases in the things that they're saying aloud. So just so you know, this is a selection of slides from a training from OFA. If you want the slides, I can give them to you. They exist on Creative Commons, so you can use them. You just can't use them to make money, and you have to give them credit. So there are 3 kind of parts to motivational interviewing. It's just a way to ask questions. It's also like if you took Intro to Psych or any form of psychology, it's a way that psychologists actually get you to find your own problems. If you have a therapist, they ask you a lot of questions, and all of a sudden you're like, I guess it's not my mom's fault. that's what they're doing. So the thing we want to do with motivational interviewing is we want to make sure that our questions are non-judgmental. We want to make sure that our questions are using the language of the person we're talking to. We're not jumping back into our intro to psych. We're not jumping into whatever it is, like using very deep PT language if we're a physical therapist. We're using we're meeting people where they are. And it's loving. So a lot of times when we talk to someone we disagree with, especially when it's someone in our family, it can be easy to come to blows because you're an idiot, how dare you? But this sort of gives us the tools to ask questions and pause so that we're using sort of loving words first. And it's expansive instead of reductionist. So we're trying to expand our worldview as well as the person we're talking to instead of trying to reduce it and make someone see that we're the only one that's right. And it doesn't mean that our experience is better or not equal to someone else's experience. It basically says that our experiences are different. It starts with that. Like, we have different experiences and I'm excited to get to know you. Okay, let's jump in. I'm going to play a couple of videos through this from a real, like, at the door conversation that someone from an LGBTQ center in LA had with an actual voter who was deciding on an issue in LA. And you'll see that the person talking to someone at the door take that person from essentially having one view to understanding their own reason for having that view to changing their mind throughout this conversation. A couple of times throughout the conversation, they'll say a couple of things that are iffy at best, but just know they get there. I'm spoiling the ending, but I want you to know when we watch this stuff. So when we ask exploratory questions, we genuinely want to understand the person we're talking to, their story, where they come from, like why they believe what they believe. Last week, we talked a lot about finding your why and knowing your why. But when you're talking to someone who disagrees with you, get to know where they're from, what their parents believed, maybe why or where that belief came from. And you want to build rapport. Like, if they tell you something that maybe you don't agree with, a tool that I've used frequently is to reference my parents. I'll say, like, not in every situation, but for example, my dad is an avid hunter. I don't love guns, but I can have a conversation with someone who does by referencing my dad. Like, I understand where you're coming from. My dad is a hunter, so I grew up around guns, but can we talk about safety, for example? And you want to obtain a history. You want to get to a point where you could say, like, I know John, he's from Davenport, Iowa. And he, in the second grade, broke his elbow. I don't know. And you want to, by the end, say, like, I'm hearing from you that this belief came from your family values. And what you're interested in learning more of is why. And reflective responses, that's kind of what I was just talking through. So when you're truly listening to someone and getting to know them, you should be able to sort of reflect back to them. And it helps them to understand that you're truly hearing them. And when they know that you're truly hearing them, they're going to open up more and give you more room to change their mind by asking more conversational questions. And one way to reflect is to reflect on feelings, because this gives them the openings to either tell you, no, you're wrong. It seems that you felt threatened. It seems that you felt unsure. It seems that you felt like something new was coming into your family system, whatever, when you heard that. Is that right? And they can tell you, no, that's not what I felt. What I actually felt was scared, or what I actually felt was mad. But what you want to be sure when you're asking questions, you don't want to respond with biased questions. You don't want to respond with questions that are like, but you understand that what you're saying is racist. Even if it's true, that's going to stop the conversation. You want to get to a point where you can get them to see it themselves. When they can see it themselves, that's when you can actually change a mind. Unless you don't care to change your mind. And the other one is premature advice. So if someone is offering you their history and you give them advice, it's just like talking to a partner. Very often they just want to be heard. They don't want the advice. Okay, so we're going to listen to a bit of a conversation where you'll start to hear that kind of reflecting at the beginning of this conversation when they're just starting to get to know each other. This is the part of the conversation where it's a little iffy, but just know that we get there.
If we were on a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is you're 100% against, 10 is 100% in favor of including them in the non-discrimination laws, and 5 somewhere in the middle, and then you have your whole scale there. Where do you think you'd put yourself?
6.
6. Okay. What would be a reason you would vote for it, and what would be a reason you wouldn't vote for it?
What would be the reason I would is because I'm not judgmental. It's
Sure.
Everybody has their own preference.
Sure.
There's no reason why I wouldn't vote for it, but I wouldn't want that around children.
Mm-hmm.
People could pretend to be and go after our kids. I mean, that's something big to think about, and that probably would change a lot of people.
So as we listen to the person listening, you know, on several occasions he wanted to be like, no. And at this point, the person at the door is just trying to get to know that woman, understand what she's coming from, and maybe what her biases are that he can help her find. So in this next phase of the conversation, he starts to ask those questions that get her there.
You know someone who is transgender?
I have someone in my family.
So is transgender? Cool. How are you related to them?
It's my nephew.
Your nephew? Or
Niece, whatever.
Niece, okay. So she...
he was born a boy, but he wants to be a girl.
Okay. How much has she talked to you about that at all?
Actually, that's funny because he felt like I'm not quite comfortable with it, so he stopped talking to me because seeing him with the hair and the lipstick, and it's hard when I raised him when he was a baby. It was a boy. I mean, he felt like I don't accept it.
Right. Do you know why they feel that way?
I don't.
Right.
That's something I would want to know because, like I said, I don't try to judge anybody. Their preference is their preference.
And so your niece.
So what's interesting, as you hear him start to dig, there's more to this. You hear him start to dig, and she's saying, like, he doesn't talk to me about it because he thinks I don't accept it. And she's starting to almost get to the point where she's saying she doesn't accept it. And this is when guiding comes into view. So there's more to that conversation, and I'm excited for you to see it. But the guiding part of the conversation is where you start to sort of clarify what their values are. So you can understand the person you're talking to, like, what is it that gets you here? Why do you believe that? You start to summarize what you've heard, and you also bring assumptions to the surface. So I'm hearing you say, like, this about your nephew. Talk to me about why you feel this way. And once you find the assumption, you can say, like, it sounds like what scares you is, or it sounds like what's stopping you is, and they can tell you, and they can start to sort of confront their own values. But what you can't do at this point, if you want to change hearts and minds, again, caveat, is confront. Confronting someone at this point before they've found their own biases for themselves, they'll shut down, they'll stop the conversation. It's hard to have a conversation once someone feels like you're there to yell, even if you want to yell. So this is the technique of pulling up alongside them. It's almost like you start the conversation from separate places, you start to find that middle ground, and then you pull up alongside them so you can have a conversation on shared values that turns into a conversation where we realize, like, maybe the things we didn't know about ourselves before. Even if someone's saying things that are factually incorrect, or they're blaming others unfairly, like, it's important at this point to just kind of listen, and then start to ask questions that get them to poke their own holes. So there are 2 techniques for this. The one is the double-sided reflection, where you kind of point out when you hear the dichotomies in their conversation. Like, I hear you saying you have a nephew that you love who is a transgender person, but you feel like you don't want that person in a bathroom. What must that feel like for that person? For example, that's that double-sided reflection, or an invert barrier. So pointing out the barrier to them. In order to move forward, you might want to know X, Y, and Z. Let's hear it in action. Let's skip these so we can get to our conversation. In action.
Or what name is she asking you?
That's another thing. His name. and the name that he's going by is?
I have a friend who's in kind of a similar
This is
situation.
important. It's a personal
this is my
connection.
friend on the left.
Okay.
One of my best friends. Great guy. And he is transgender. So he was born a girl. He was raised as a girl. And, I think what's really important was that it wasn't his body that mattered so much. It didn't matter what body looks like. He's still definitely a boy. But he really wanted his body to reflect that and to feel very real to him. And he got his chest flattened. And he was really excited about it. He took a bunch of selfies of himself with his flattened chest. He sent a picture back to one of his best friends from high school, and she said, she just wasn't expecting it. And I think it really caught her off guard. And she said, oh, what? That's really weird. And he had been so excited about that surgery, and it really hurt him, I think, to hear his friend react that way.
Maybe that's the way I kind of reacted towards him without saying it, but the way I guess I was acting. As if it's like, don't come around me, that's really weird.
I couldn't, honestly, no one
now you make me feel bad because...
No, I'm definitely not trying to.
I
think it's really complicated.
I didn't even think about it like that. Like, if I was in this position, it's kind of hard to, I never thought about it that way.
I'm wondering, is there a time that you ever kind of felt like you were on the receiving end of that? Like, when you ever felt different?
Not really. Mine is totally something else. So.
No, that's totally fine. I think we can all relate to that feeling of being judged.
Oh,
yeah. That's really relevant.
Yeah, all the time.
What's maybe a specific time?
Maybe a couple years ago, when I first moved out to LA. It's got a lot of bad vibes here and there and here and there. It slowly makes you feel like you're alone or...
Yeah. What were some of the things that happened?
So what we come to find from the next piece of the conversation is essentially she has changed her mind entirely. He asked her one more time, would you vote to include transgender rights in equal rights in LA in an upcoming vote? And what she says 10 out of 10, I would vote to include that. And because over the course of the conversation, she has gotten herself to understand her nephew's point of view. She's gotten herself to understand this person who's having a conversation's point of view, and she understands implicitly her own biases. It's not always that easy. You guys, it doesn't always go that well. But that is how motivational interviewing can be used to actually get someone to listen to themselves and hear their own biases in action. So we have 12 minutes left in our time together. We're going to, is our friend Marquita still on? Did we lose her? I don't think she's not. Oh, she's still here. Okay, good. I'm going to split you guys into 6 groups. We'll finish with a quick conversation where we can reflect very quickly on what we talked about tonight. We'll talk about 2 questions. I'll put it in the chat. The 2 questions are, what's one thing you've learned today or this week? And what's one conversation you're looking forward to having? So maybe a conversation that you've potentially been putting off with someone you love, that you potentially disagree with, or just one person you're really interested in finding out more from on their experience. So I'll put you guys into groups. I can do it. I'm so good at this now. There'll be a few of you in each group. You'll have about 10 minutes to talk. So give each other about 2 minutes each, and then we'll see you on the other side. We'll sign off after that.
That was that today. It's wild and interesting too when you have these kind of conversations, because I think it totally can be like a panel discussion, which was cool to see today, where we had people chiming in and we had thoughts from different people and questions and things like that. And so that's what it's all about, and I love it all. Appreciate and respect all of it. And yeah, let's just keep this energy and keep this all rolling. Moving forward, next week will be our last series, our last time as far as like what we're doing for this 4 week, but as far as like programming, things like that we'll be doing with the SoulCycle, there's more and more and more to come as we plan and kind of sit down and strategize and and figure out how we want to move forward. Even other people, if you guys have ideas, thoughts, or you know, anything, if anything comes across your way, definitely let us know, because we're going to stay in this programming and strategizing and putting things together mode, as far as moving forward. So yeah, we're doing this. We're doing the things. And yeah, I appreciate all of you guys' time once more. Have a good evening. And yeah, we'll be back at this again next week. Hopefully you guys can join us. And yeah, let's keep on moving forward and being hopeful and yeah, getting out here and doing our thing. Yes, and Kellen, I don't know if he's still in the call or not, but
Here.
there you go. Yes, love. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time this evening. Hearing your voice and seeing your face through Zoom has been great.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. This has been awesome. And I got to meet some people in my breakout, so that was nice. Yeah, so yeah, thanks. I appreciate it for giving me this platform.
All right. Well, like I said, we really appreciate you guys once more. And yeah, like I said, if you have any other questions, you want to tap in or chime in any kind of way, if you want any of the information that we shared as far as like in the training, things like that, just get in contact with any of us and we can share that information. And if you want to connect with anybody, like I said at the top of this, as far as, you know, specific questions, or if you have ideas, or if you just need help with moving forward yourself, just reach out to us, you know, and yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Well, you guys enjoy your night, and bye.